Welcome back and welcome to this week's media panel. On the panel, listener columnist Bill Ralston and journalist Jock Anderson. Jock, you've made the news yourself a little bit this week. What can you tell us about that?
Well, very little, Rachel. As everyone knows, until Wednesday, I was the chief reporter of National Business Review online. My employment was terminated. I can't talk about that at this stage. I've engaged legal advice, and we will be pursuing matters hopefully in the new week.
I don't mean to be snickering here, but I do think it's funny that the first casualty of the whole Len Brown affair happens to be a journalist.
Indeed.
I'm trying not to laugh here.
Right, we shall leave it there. All right, we will move on. Let's go to an interview on Campbell Live this week. Energy and Resources Minister Simon Bridges appeared on the programme. He and Campbell Live, well, they've been bickering over whether he'd appear or not, and it looks like Simon Bridges did come ready for a fight.
They've paid out $4 billion.
You're a very well-paid guy who has shareholdings, I bet, in a number of companies. Are you responsible for what they do?
Minister,
it was a cheap shot.
No, wait a minute.
But the fact of the matter is...
You've come in well prepared with all due respect, just lines to spout out. I don't own
that is
a
rubbish,
25% shareholding in an oil company that was responsible for the biggest calamity in the history of oil drilling in the world ever.
That is simply not right. They were a passive shareholder.
Can I read you something, Minister?
And so it went on and on and on. And I'm not sure we were any the wiser at all about oil drilling, really, at the end of it all.
No. I watched it. There were two middle-aged men yelling at each other. I don't think anyone learned a lot out of that. It was very entertaining to watch. The thing is, if you compare it with, say, the John Key interview with John Campbell, Key talked straight through John to the audience out there. In that case, and it worked for John Key. For Simon Bridges, however, he engaged directly with John and they both lost.
It became a bit high-pitched and a lot of people talking over each other. What did you make of it, Joe?
Well, it did, and it strikes me as not being very professional from either side in any event. And you just can't go and have this type of yelling at one another. No one learns anything from it. I would have thought that efforts should have been made to take a much more professional approach to the whole thing.
It did seem as if the minister was, was angling towards having a go at Campbell, and it became personal.
I mean, don't forget the cabinet, in fact, the entire National Party, loathed John Campbell. So they saw their guy going in and taking that nasty little John Campbell on. Meanwhile, the left thought that Campbell had won because he basically made the man lose his temper. Weird.
I think you've got to give credit to John. You have to be a bit more cunning and a bit more crafty if you're going to deal with people from as Bill says, the right-hand side, the national government. The way to go to deal with them is not to go in with all guns blazing, because they'll be as good, if not better, coming back. There are subtle and crafty ways of achieving what he wanted to achieve, and I don't think this was a very good example of doing it. It wasn't one of his best shows.
OK, then the following night, of course, Len Brown just, the story broke, and that night he was on Campbell Live. What did you make of that?
Well, that was an attempt, classic PR. He's got David Lewis, a former Chief Press Secretary for Helen Clark, working for him. It was classic PR to go straight and do one interview, do it to the nation, you apologise, you say how terrible it is, you abase yourself, and then you shoot through. And that's exactly what's happened. The other thing is he's managed to portray himself, almost Len Brown, as a victim in all of this.
Yes,
in fact, he did actually carry on a 2-year affair.
So that's what you would do in terms of PR. You would, there's an issue, you front up as quickly as you can, because presumably he would have been hounded, and probably still is, for that first interview. I imagine everyone would have been pushing him to get it.
You've got to front, you've got to lance the boil, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And doing that, you still retain an element of control. And I watched the interview, and I agree with Bill. What also struck me is in my opinion, I got the impression that Len Brown handled himself in quite a dignified fashion. It must have been particularly difficult for him to go on live television and speak to the country in the circumstances. Again, I thought John Campbell handled that very well. and he could have pushed him a lot harder, but he didn't. I think he took a very good and balanced view of it. And Brown, I think, came out quite dignified in the circumstances, which are not good.
It's interesting, again, here, opinion, certainly online opinion, is divided again between left and right. If you're from the left, you think it's a nasty Tory plot by Paulino and his cronies, and I'm sure they were involved in it, and as we're seeing day by day come out here. If you're from the right, you think it's the mayor getting his just desserts. No one has behaved well in this whole tawdry, seedy affair.
And of course, this story broke on a blog, and the level of detail that was revealed in that blog was, well, from my personal opinion, horrific and not required. But it does show, doesn't it, a very clear difference, because if this story had broken on 3 News or if it had broken in the Herald or any other paper, it certainly wouldn't have been published with the level of detail that we saw on that whale oil blog.
Yeah, I would like to agree with that, although whether or not the so-called traditional or conventional media aided people in telling them where to find the gory and salacious detail by going to whale oil. I mean, I can recall in a previous life when I worked for the Truth newspaper long before Cameron Slater got his hands on it. I can tell you that we would not, in my 18 years there, we would not have published the level of detail that whale oil published of that guy. We would have alluded to certain sexual activities if they were there, but we would not have gone to that length, and that's saying something.
Well, that's what blogs can do, you see. I mean, because you're sitting there on your little computer, and they have a level of detail there that no mainstream media could get away with, because they'd be in court.
Where is their control? What checks and balance? What level of decency have they got?
I would come back to the basic line of what is in the public interest, and the level of detail in that blog was not in the public's interest.
I agree.
It just wasn't.
I agree.
I started to lose interest as I read on. I mean, but still, the mainstream media has picked up on it. It's not the first time the media has picked up on a blog story, but this is probably the biggest blog story that's ever broken, in New Zealand anyway. And the media are pushing it on further. I was waiting for whale oil to come up with more stuff on Brown. He's yet to do so.
Okay, John Paulino, he's scarpered. He's in Australia, or he's with his...
Allegedly.
Is celebrating a birthday in Australia at the moment. If you were doing the PR now for Len Brown, what would your advice to him be?
For Len, just keep your head down and keep going. Len, unless something else comes out of this, that he's had a series of affairs with other women or has used council funding, he will survive this. And his strategy has been the right one from the start. Apologise and move on. I
spoke to another analyst who said actually what needs to happen for Len Brown to essentially move this forward is that his wife needs to come out and stand by her man. And the same way, and I don't think you remember it, when Bill Clinton, what occurred with him and Monica Lewinsky, we suddenly, about a week later, we saw Bill and Hillary, and between them was Chelsea Clinton holding their hands, and there was the united family walking across the White House lawn.
It's a bit like you see on Little Britain sometimes, and the cabinet ministers at the gates of the mansion and the happy family in there. And I disagree. I think she should remain in the background. Yeah. I think that what you've got here is that New Zealanders and human beings generally will forgive people their sort of, sexual dalliances. The one thing that seems to get us all sort of cardigan and Presbyterian is if you tamper with public money. So if there's any suggestion or any, in fact, evidence that comes out that any ratepayers' money has been involved, then I think the whole game will change.
And speaking of public money, of course, when we had the, John Banks and Len Brown and those sideshows going on, what was lost into the background really was the superb piece of current affairs journalism by Mihina Rangi Forbes on Native Affairs about the misuse of public money in Kohanga Reo. That was a brilliant story and sadly was superseded by sex and scandal, basically.
It got swamped. It got swamped within 24 hours.
Maybe they should run it again next week.
Maybe they should.
Yeah, it's good to see Mihi doing some really good old-fashioned current affairs, and it's good to see Maori television doing so well with that.
And standing up to a legal court challenge to try and gag them and shut them down, and then the people backed off it. Good on them. This is what Native Affairs is very good at doing.
Yes, and what was interesting is that this was Māori, holding Māori to account.
Well, they were accused by Tamahiri of Maori bashing, you know, I mean, which is just ridiculous. You know, they just did their job and did it well.
I thought I was the only one who was accused of Maori bashing. There may be a reason for that.
No, Mihi Forbes and Native Affairs are as well.
Oh, well, good on it.
Was a very, very good piece of journalism. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Jock Anderson, good luck, I think is the right thing to say here.
Thank you very much.
Also, Bill, you're available for work. Bill Ralston, also Les McConnell.
Give the man a job.
Thank you so much for your time this morning.